This is one part of a 4-part series of the best vehicles in every single spec in the game. The link to that playlist will be the top link in the description. For the sake of this list, I'm only going to be including cars that are currently obtainable, so no exclusive cars will be counted. And I'm also not going to be including cars that are better with clutch or wheel or those kind of biases. Any clutch bias or exclusive cars that need to be mentioned will be mentioned at the end of the video. I also will not be including any budget options, as money should not be an issue in this game. If you have an issue with money, after this guide, I have a Bucks guide you can go and watch to earn enough money to get all the cars in this video. This also will not include the best cars for skills, as that was a separate guide I made a while ago. Instead, only including the best vehicles for their respective events. Also, this can sometimes vary based on each event, so it's always good practice to check the leaderboards to see what the people at the top are using. The best vehicles can sometimes change, so check the pinned comment for any updates on cars that have changed since I uploaded this video. If 3 or more cars have changed since I uploaded this video, the comment will link to a newer guide. And stick around to the very end of the video for all the tips, tricks, and hacks, and even what parts to use for every single spec.
3, 2, 1.
First and foremost is the Lamborghini Gallardo. It is definitely your best option in the street racing category. It has brilliant handling and very good speed. You can really top the leaderboards with this car. Also, one of the main reasons it is the best is because of its nitro power. Different cars in the Crew 2 have different strengths of nitro power. The Gallardo's is powerful enough to put it at the top of the street racing category. In fact, this thing is so quick that scientists have found if you finish the race with this car, you still have enough time to subscribe with notifications onto this channel before the second place car reaches the end. Let me reiterate, this is the best vehicle in street. I'm going to give other options, but if you want a good street car, this is the one you should save for. Another very good option is the Audi R8. I'd probably put it at second place as far as street is concerned. I wouldn't say it's amazing or the best, but it's definitely another very good option, and when you're used to it, using all of the best things you can, the best tricks, tips that'll be at the end of this video, you can most definitely win with this thing very often, and I would say it is the second best street car in the street racing category. So if you want to, go with the Audi and the Lamborghini, but the only one you really need is the Lamborghini though. Moving on to surprise sweaty option, the Porsche 911 GT. Now, this thing is a little bit more uncontrollable. It's a bit speedier, but it's harder to control and grasp. That's why this thing is only if you're a much more talented player. Now, be honest with yourself, go for the Gallardo first. Then when you've earned some money, grab this thing, try and use it later. There is a number of tracks that this thing is better than the Gallardo on definitively. However, on most tracks in the hands of the top players, this is the meta street car. Disclaimer, I still recommend the Gallardo over it. The last thing to mention is street bikes, and this one is rather simple. It's the Honda CBR 1000 RR SP2. This is the best street bike by far. It features a slightly altered handling model to a couple of the other bikes in the spec, so this puts it miles above and the only option really if you want a good street bike. Next on the list is drift, and one of the best ways to get used to the drifting in the game is actually by going on social media, pretending like we're not playing an arcade game, and complaining about the drift physics because they're not realistic enough. After roughly 3 to 4 hours of worshipping the Supra and the Charger Red Eye Hellcat, once you load back up the game, you can actually go to the honorable mention of this part, rough 3400k. This thing is actually a really good drift car, and I recommend this thing, but not as much as I recommend the other car on this list for the best drift cars, and that is the RX-7. This is the best car for drifting. If you want a good drift car for event, use this thing. However, there is a little caveat in the drift spec. There's an issue that comes up, and that is handbrake method. That the RX-7 is not the best for. If you don't choose to use handbrake method, use the RX-7, But the handbrake method, this is when players will use the power sliding mechanic in the game, pressing X and square at the same time, along with some very wonky settings, and get very, very high scores like 800k plus. The best car for this method is the Z4. I have a guide that goes in depth on how to do this method, how to complete the method, how to learn it, and a much more in-depth look at drifting. The link to that will be in the description.
3, 2, 1.
Moving on to the drag spec, it's the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. That's all. It's the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. Not a single other drag vehicle beats this in any way. It's literally just the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. There's no other vehicle worth buying in drag. Buy this thing. There's nothing else to say, honestly. Buy this thing.
Okay, because now we can afford to replace parts that are
3,
broken.
2, 1.
And finally, the Hypercar spec. Now, this one is interesting. The honorable mention is going to the Bugatti Divo, the normal version. Although this thing is completely outshone by its Summit counterparts, this version on its own is still an okay, usable hypercar. However, there's no point in getting this thing when there is better options, like the Senna. This is much better for shorter, turny tracks in the hypercar spec. As far as any kind of turny racing kind of race goes, this is the one you want to go with. However, it's not the best quote-unquote hypercar in the spec. The absolute best vehicle in the hypercar category goes to the La Voiture Noire, which is French for the black car. This car is actually cousins to La Bouton Rouge, which is French for the red button, which is the one you're gonna head down there and click. For any kind of average hypercar event, the La Voiture Noire is a good, easy one to use. The Strassen version, although does beat it out in some turnier races, this thing is the overall best hypercar in the spec. Yes, it is also the most expensive. Like I said, money should not be an issue in this game. I've got a guide, you can use that. Other than that, that's all we have. Now remember, after this video, you can check out the other videos in this playlist, and here is going to be the tips and tricks that I can tell you for everything in this video. When considering exclusive cars that aren't obtainable anymore, the Devo Magma Edition and the Emerald Storm Edition are the two vehicles you want to go with. If you have either of these two cars, they are easily in the top 3 on level with the La Voiture Noire. Cars that, if you have wheel, clutch, those kind of biases, the Honda S2000 in Street is really good, as well as the Porsche Strassen version in Hypercar. It's a very, very good hypercar round turns, etc. As far as parts are concerned, for street racing, you want to be using pure and refill speed on a Nitro Chemist set. The Nitro Chemist set will double the amount of nitro, and pure will increase the power, while refill speed increases the refill time. For drift, it does not matter what set you use. You can use any gold set in drift, but you want to be using Slippery and Hothead. One of them increases the maximum multiplier, and the other one increases the amount of points gotten at speed. For drag, you want to be using Pure and Frenetic, Pure being increased nitro power, and Frenetic being increased nitro power per second of usage. This will give you the most speed built up when nitroing in drag. This also needs to be a Nitro Chemist set, meaning double nitro tank size. And finally, for Hypercar, again, it is refill speed and pure in a Nitro Chemist set. That's the simple, basic, best Hypercar set. Smooth stretched asphalt tires. They are vanity tires that actually improve the handling of your vehicle and make them easier to handle. I made a full in-depth look video on that as well. Also, speaking of all the different videos from this that will be in the description, the Bucks guide, a bunch of different methods for the best ways to earn money in the crew too. Also, a skills guide, which was an in-depth look at every single skill in the game, where I described how to play them, how to max out the points on them, and gave like a full rundown on every single one. And then after that was a drift guide, which in that one I show casual drifting, as well as drifting in events like the RX-7, and also the handbrake method drifting that I do, which I fully explain how to do in that video. So remember, you've got the Gallardo, the Z4, the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, and the La Voiture Noir. Make sure to check out the other videos in this series. The playlist link is in the description. Thank you to popular members. A special thank you to famous members in a bit.